Hi, everybody. This is Dear Mama Sal, and we are live on a Sunday afternoon, which means it's time for us to talk about coping with stress. And today we're going to talk about how to reduce our stress by understanding opinions a lot better. This is going to be part one of a two-part series. I will do the second part of this next week. In today's broadcast, what we're going to talk about is how do we form our opinions, right? Everything that goes into forming our opinions. Because then next week, we will demonstrate how knowing that will help us deal with people with differing opinions, which I so seriously believe in the coming weeks and months and even years, we're going to have a lot more differing opinions coming in between election midterms in the States and things like that. We're going to have a lot of people with a lot of differing opinions and allergies who are, we're going to need to communicate with. And as usual, here at Dear Mama Sal, we are constantly looking at upgrading our emotional intelligence to help us be less stressed by what's going on the outside world. So today we will be looking at opinions, how we form them. Next week, we'll talk about how knowing how they're formed will help us deal with other people. And I think from that perspective, it's really important that we understand that both parts are essential. Until we really understand how we formed our opinions, how can we possibly relate to other people's opinions? Make sense? And, I'm going to start with a quote, and some of you may relate to this. And it said, "Do not let somebody else's opinion of your dreams become your vision or reality." How many of you know that during your lifetime, you had a vision and it was struck down because you listened to what other people said and it completely squashed your dream? And I'm not saying that other people's opinions are wrong. What we will know and we understand to be true, it's just their opinion. Hi, Chip, good to see you. And of course, Jody, thank you for being here for me as usual. For those of you who don't know, Jody is our admin. So we are really going to have, I hope, a healthy discussion here. And, the more people that chime in, the more information we will get, the more information helps us in our opinions. First of all, though, thoughts and prayers for Leah. For those of you who know Leah from Nevada, long-time Dear Mama Sal follower from way back when, she had a gastric bypass surgery, I think, Jody, or did she have the sleeve? I think she had the bypass. Anyway, got home, and then within 24 hours, she was rushed back to hospital. So we're waiting to hear how the second operation did. Obviously, something went wrong with the first one. Yeah, Jody's also saying she thinks it was a bypass. Let's be honest, we don't know. True? So it's just our opinion. We'll wait to update you, and we'll find out that information between the two of us. I'm hoping that Sandy has, safely come back from Portugal. We know that yesterday was probably a difficult day for Karen, sometimes known as Rinsky. That would be the anniversary of the passing of her daddy back in last year. And we know that it's Kez's birthday tomorrow, so a very happy birthday. And also, because of the extreme heat situation in certain parts of the world, please, when you're thinking about how to keep yourself cool, please remember your pets. And the reason I say that is because a lot of you probably think, well, I'll let them go outside and find the shade. I wanted to show you something here. Just hold on a second. I want to show you the inside the house at the moment. It's 79.7 degrees American, which is about 26 and a half in Canadian. In other words, 26 and a half in Celsius and 27.7 in Fahrenheit. What I want you to do was to go, okay, that's the temperature inside the house. I've got everything shut down. I've closed down the blind here. Everything's shut down, and I've got an air conditioner set at 78, so it only kicks in once it gets to 78. I've got a mini air conditioner here because this is the hottest room in the house. However, when I went out to my deck, and I just want to show you where it is covered, you would think that would be cooler for a pet. It's actually 90 on the deck. All right. Or over, nearly 35 on my deck. So I want you to be aware, if you've got pets, please be extra careful with them. And we will keep reminding you as the summer goes on here to be aware that sometimes letting them go out where it is cool is not necessarily the right idea. The next thing I wanted to remind you all of, there's a reason why cowboys wear bandanas. And I know that some of you longtime viewers know all about this. I'm just going to wet this. So even though it is, close to 80 where I'm standing, the reason that cowboys wore bandanas and still do is because it's twofold. Number one, it protects their neck. Okay, so if you have a bandana, it protects your neck. But also, they wet it because the heat of your body will evaporate the damp, right? And in doing that, it cools you. In other words, I am that much more cool just for doing what I did. Make sense? And as some of you know, longtime viewers, I learned this in Africa. If it's a really hot night and you're having difficulty cooling your body, wet the whole of your scarf. If you've got a big scarf like this, wet all of it and then just put it over you. And you will be amazed at the difference in your core temperature once you do that. I know Jody tried it and now swears by it, but I want to tell you, it used to, I lived in a house in Africa, all right, without air conditioning. Yeah, Jody's going, it works. Yep. So two things. So just be aware. But I can handle 79.9 degrees. It's coming up. Why? The sun is now coming to this window, which is why I closed it. So that's my tip for the day, or a couple of them. Let's talk about opinions. Now, in all things, when I'm trying to understand things, maybe something happened to me and I don't know why I reacted the way I did. I think those of you who are regular viewers know that I do this. I take a piece of paper and I put whatever my problem is here, how I've reacted or whatever hygiene, and then I ask myself, who triggered you, right? What happened that triggered you? Why did it trigger you? Where does this trigger come from, for example, and when did you form that opinion? Or, that bias, whatever it was. So now the reason I do that is it helps me understand myself better, but it also helps me understand the other person better. So I look at it from both sides. But today we're going to look from this side. Now, if any of you are people that would like to play along with this, you might want to get, a couple of bits of paper and a pencil just so that you can, understand how this works. All right. And it's really important that you understand the process, because once you've got it, all you need to do is to remember to go who, what, why, where, when, and how. Oh, and how. I didn't put that. Who, what, why, where, when, how. Okay. And if you're trying to write a letter or write an instruction for somebody, make sure you answer all those questions. Really important. They are the essence of communication. If your communication answers all those things, all right, then you are a good communicator. So here we go. I want us to be able to handle different opinions with more grace and not have it trigger us as much. How about you guys? Tough times are coming on this, right? And so what I want us to do is to improve our emotional intelligence so that we can handle it better and maybe be a role model for other people. So what do you think an opinion is? If a guy from Mars came down and went, opinion, what is it? What is an opinion? What is your idea of an opinion? And the reason I ask that is because it's important that we understand our understanding of the word. And so whenever I'm trying to do a problem solving task like this, the first thing I will do is I'll go to a dictionary and I will find out what the official definition is on that particular dictionary, and then work from there. All right. So I looked it up in a dictionary, and what it said was the following: an opinion is a belief based on experience and on certain facts, but not amounting to sure knowledge. So it's based on certain facts, but is it the truth? Depends what side of the fence you sit. Okay. All right. Jeannie is saying a judgment formed about something. All right. She sees that an opinion is a judgment that she has formed about something. Good. Thanks, Jeannie, for the feedback. I know I can rely on you to come in and give us your opinion. And I want to tell you that more than anybody, in some ways, I know that quite often your opinion is differing from other people's, and you still come in and politely give it. And that takes incredible skill, and I thank you. And that is the whole thing, all right? So it shows emotional intelligence. All right, so let's start on an easy one, all right? How about Dear Mama Sal, the channel? Let's start with the who. Who first introduced you to Dear Mama Sal? All right? That's an interesting thing. Maybe you're a first-time viewer and you're going, well, I just found you. How did you find me, right? Who led you to me? And once you've thought about that, and if any of the people in the room want to give their input, this is good because it'll all add to how this works. All right, so Jody's saying she first saw me at December and then got an opinion of me. All right, so my question is, what was it about what you saw at December that made you say, I'd like to see more of her? And I presume that's what happened. So what was it that you saw? Or what was it that I did that made you want to visit Dear Mama Sal, the channel, and then end up being administrator? So that is right. Benji and Judy was for Jeannie, right? They got to me via Benji and Judy, and a lot of viewers did. All right, and I understand that. And again, Jeannie, what they introduced you, but what was it that you saw in me that made you want to become a regular viewer? All right, Jody's saying, I heard you answering questions and thought to myself, I'd love to know more about this fascinating person. And I'm not even paying her. All right, so that was what motivated you. You found me fascinating. And the truth that I know in life is the things that you find fascinating are the things that are fascinating in you as well. Chip saying, I think I saw a video with Judy in it. And then YouTube recommended your channel years ago. All right, so understand, people help us form opinions, right? Whether it's YouTube, the people at YouTube, the big algorithm, right? That said, okay, Chip likes this sort of stuff, so let me put up that she needs to know about Dear Mama Sal. So thank you, YouTube, for recommending that Chip have a look at it. All right. So do you understand? We've got the who and what it was. What was it, though, Chip, that made you stay and listen to more? All right. Think about that. Because just a lot of people will have come to see Dear Mama Sal and gone, not for me. So what was it that made you stay? Janie's saying, I recognize things in you that I wanted to hear more of. Good. And you will always get more. You know that. The thing that I love about doing Dear Mama Sal is we all grow together. So we now know the why. All right. But where were you? Can you remember where you were when you first heard about Dear Mama Sal? Because that's a really interesting thing, because sometimes that is an important part of why you formed the opinion. All right, if you were watching me at Dan Simba, then you knew a lot about my character just by watching the job I did in Dan Simba, right, and how I did it. So the where I was important to, we know, to Jody and probably to some other people as well. All right, you knew I was a contributor. You knew I was a strong supporter of Benji and Judy and the work that they do. You understand? There a lot of that has influence on the reality of your opinion. And then how many years ago did you first hear about Dear Mama Sal? How many years ago? Jody's saying 2014. That's a long time. I only started it in 2012, Jody. So you understand you were there way early on. All right. And so when you understand that, and you're still here in 2022, what can I say? That is pretty awesome. And again, how has it affected your life? Right? Because all of this is all part of your opinion. If it, in some way it had not affected your life, you wouldn't still be here, is my belief, my opinion. All right. So it is pretty clear to me that anybody who has been there, done that, gone through all of this, the reason you're still there is because you've got something from it. That's how you form the opinion, is that it was of value to you. Makes sense? So did you all understand that all is contributing to your opinion? It's not one thing. It wasn't one thing. Yeah, Benji and Judy alone wouldn't have done it. Chip saying, I saw a video of you driving to work. You gave advice, and it was around the time of my mother passing. I really liked your approach and found it insightful. It was way back in 2014. Wow, Chip, I had no idea you'd been around that long. That, yeah, brings tears to my eyes of gratitude. Thank you. All right, Jody said you helped me turn the mirror, ditch the excuses, find motivation, because I wanted to live. Yes, I think one of the most dramatic questions, where I asked permission first, knowing me, but one of the most dramatic questions I ever asked of Jody is, oh, by the way, I'd like to know, do you want to live? Why? Because she had, hi, Hawkeye, because she had a mentality that told me she was dying. And so my question was, do you want to live? And I said, it doesn't matter whether it's yes or no, because if you want to live, I want to take your hand and help you do that. But if you want to die, I just need you to know I'll also be there. See, it doesn't matter what path you were on, because we're all in our own individual paths. Do you agree? It's not about somebody being slower than you are or faster than you are. This is about, we're all traveling our own individual paths. And depending on where we are on that path will depend, our opinions will also, be formed by that, right? It's the where. Jeannie's saying, I've learned to live a better life because of you. You taught me about emotional intelligence. Yes, and I will continue to do that, because I think in that is if we can get emotional intelligence, we're not going to get depressed. If we can get more emotional intelligence, we're going to understand people better. If we get more emotional intelligence, we'll be able to block people out better, and we will be able to have peace. And that is what I wish for all of us. All right, so do you see how that all worked out? Let's take a new one. How about medical marijuana? Okay, let's do that one. Next one. So feel free to type in your questions if you're in the room, your answers. Who first introduced you to medical marijuana? Now, first of all, let me go back a step. When did you first hear about marijuana? For me, the first time I heard about marijuana was when I was in Africa, and my gardener was stoned out of his mind. And I remember saying to my husband, that I just recently married, I think we need to take him to hospital because he's either drunk out of his skull or else he has got a serious problem going on. And, that's the who. All right. So that's the person that introduced me, because my husband turned around and said, no, he's been smoking. What did they call it? I don't think they called it weed. They had another name for it. All right. So that was where I first came across it. So my understanding of marijuana was that it was a drug. All right. All right, Jody's saying, I can't remember when I first heard about it, probably a decade ago. My doctor recommended that I try it for my pain. Yes, we're going to come up to that point in a second, Jody. Chip saying, I needed that wisdom in my life. I don't have a close family, and your topics and opinions have often helped me when I needed them. Thank you for being here for us, Sal. Wow. It really is my pleasure. You know that. How do you know that, Chip? I'm still doing it. If it were not a pleasure to do it for me, would I put this much work into it? Think about that. I'm not that noble, really. Or am I? All right. So that's the person who first introduced me to marijuana. And what was my understanding of it? All right. That people got weird. Why did I change my mind? At what point, let me ask you all that, at what point did you, first of all, did you all have a negative thing about, I have another thing that happened to me close around that time. Actually, now that I think about it, I found out about marijuana before that. That's interesting. Talking about it helped me and remember, have another memory. And how many of you understand? That's why I like us talking about things, because it helps us understand. The first time I came across it was when somebody I was going out with at a party passed me a hand-rolled cigarette and said, oh, you got to try this, Sal. And all I knew was that it was a hand-rolled cigarette. And I took it and went gaga. I was terrified. Now, see, my memory cut that out. But now that I'm talking about it, it brings it back. So that was my first. I was petrified. All right, Jeannie's saying, I'm an old hippie, so I know of marijuana from the 60s. Medical marijuana is newer for me. I understand this may be helpful to some patients, right? We're getting to this point. Good. Jody's saying, I had a negative opinion about it because I wasn't properly educated about it. Yeah. And so to me, it was interesting. Why did you change your mind about it? I want to tell you, I had a husband that smoked marijuana. And I was terrified of that because he'd smoke it and drive. And, I really had an issue with it. But also, I grew up in the 60s. Well, I grew up, before the 60s, but I lived through the 60s and, the fact that people were smoking it all the time. All right. So Hawkeye is saying, in the school, they would categorize it on the same level as hard drugs, but now potential medical benefits of it now we know the medical benefits, right? We take it more seriously. It can also work wonders for pain without the psychoactive effect, if that's not your thing. I understand that, and we're going to get to that. You see, why did I change my mind? It was a person. And the person who changed my mind about marijuana was Dr. Sanjay Gupta, when he did a 2-hour special about medical marijuana and why he had changed his opinion. I watched that, and I want to say it blew my mind in terms of its effects. And then I felt terrible because prior to that, I'd had a friend with cancer who was smoking marijuana, and I did not have sympathy for her for that. And she, it was interesting to me that once I realized what it can do and how it can help people. Yeah, Chip is saying, I had a negative opinion about marijuana because it is what I was taught at school. So we know a lot of our opinions come from the who, the teachers, your parents, the nuns, whatever it was, the who has a lot of impact depending on how your opinion of the educational figure. All right. So Chip is saying, however, going through personal trauma and a bad car accident, my opinion has changed dramatically. Absolutely. Right. So why did you change the opinion? You got different education about it. True. Hawkeye is saying, I'm currently medicating right now, as a matter of fact. Yeah. My grandpa used it while he was undergoing chemo. See, that would change a lot of opinions. All right. When you have personal experience of it. Or in my case, listening and watching Sanjay Gupta change his opinion the way that he did really made me wake up and go, wait a minute. It has benefits. It's not just a hippie drug. Where was I when I first came across marijuana? As I now remembered, I was at a party out in the African sun, getting drunk. And the next thing I knew, I didn't know what had happened to me. All right, because somebody had I literally smoked this thing, not knowing, thinking that it was just a strange, it was a bit like a Gaulois. If any of you ever smoked the French cigarette Gaulois, really strong tobacco in it. And that's what I thought I was doing, was smoking a really strong tobacco. And later found out that wasn't the case. And by the way, do you think I was much the amusement of everybody who knew what I'd just done to myself? The rest of the people were all cracked up laughing, and that didn't help me either. People laughing at me when I didn't know, I thought I'd lost my mind. And then they realized I was genuinely terrified, and they said, no, and they explained what they had done. And I looked at the guy I was with who handed that to me, and I said, how could you do that to me? I thought you loved me. How could you do that to me, without giving me information? How could you just, think that was funny? I didn't see him again, obviously. So we know the where and when. That would have been before I got married, but I was in Africa already. So it would have been the 80s, late 70s. No, I went to Africa I was in Africa. Oh, wait a minute, people. My memory of Mary Jane goes back. Isn't it interesting? You sort of need to, and that's why I love to do this, because as you work your way through, other memories will come. I was in London when of course I was. It was the 60s. I was in London before I was in Africa, working in London. And that's where I first came across it, as far as I remember. But can you see, and I'm not doing this intentionally, I started off thinking the where was somewhere completely different the first time. And now I'm realizing it was way back when, all right, in the 60s, before I ever went to Africa. When I went to London is where I first came across it. Interesting. And how has it affected your life? How has changing your opinion affected your life? I can't go back to the person that I didn't understand it was helping their cancer pain. I can't go back and apologize for that, but I can be more understanding of other things. Hawkeye is saying the current strains are so much more potent than the old strains of the past. But you understand, maybe there are some people watching this broadcast that we don't know about, in the wings somewhere, or will watch the replay. And by the way, if you're doing that, please feel free to drop your comments in anywhere and give it a thumbs up if you're finding these examples of any benefit to you. And follow us on Facebook and Twitter, obviously. All right, so Jody's saying she's had some success during her trial period. Very encouraging, yes. And Jody, you are vaping yours, all right? And so, this is another thing, right? How did you learn about the who was the pivotal person? And you're going to hear me say that again. In all our lives, our opinion changed when we talked to, listened to, or saw the opinion of somebody who was a pivotal person. You'd heard about it probably before, but for Jody, for example, her doctor was the pivotal person that changed her mind. She changed her own mind, but his knowledge helped her see it a different way. Judy's saying sometimes marijuana can be laced with other substances. It can make you nearly numb. Yeah, and I want to tell you that in the 60s, it was pretty terrifying when we didn't have the education about it that we have today. So, but as I talk about this, can any of you see how my opinions changed through the years between the 60s and 2022? My opinions of it changed. And although I was getting educated all around, by the way, who was my first little bit of a shift person before Sanjay did the pivotal, the complete one? This one would have been Rock Hudson. When I heard that Rock Hudson had AIDS. So let's take that as our next thing, because that's important. Because how about your opinion about AIDS? All right. So who was my pivotal person? Heard about it a lot, heard about the risk about blood transfusions because my aunt needed a blood transfusion while she was in Africa. And she said, well, I'm terrified of getting a blood transplant for this operation because of HIV. And quite honestly, I didn't know very much about it. And I said, no, don't worry about it. But I can see now why she was so worried. So that was the start of my understanding that there was this thing called HIV. I was in Africa at the time. But then when I heard that Rock Hudson had it, my first reaction was, what? He's gay? How could I have watched all those movies and been so hoodwinked? I was angry. I remember that really well. And so he was a pivot point because it sort of knocked me off my rocker for a moment. Let me just read a couple of comments. Chip is saying, my friend saw me go through a rough anxiety 5 years ago, offered me some, and it felt like the weights had been lifted off my shoulders. Yeah. So that friend was your pivotal person, right? Hawkeye is saying part of the reason it was legalized was to prevent contamination. The government product is far safer and not laced with anything. Quite agree. All right. So you understand what we're getting at, though. So I know, again, notice how I keep remembering different parts of the puzzle as I'm doing this exercise, which is why I love to do this. I notice that it helps me come to the reality much better. So what did I think about AIDS at the time? Only happens to people who are gay. And then guess what? People who weren't gay started to get it. And now suddenly the WHO changed. Therefore, what did I think about it? I suddenly became very scared of it because, I was having sex and apparently I could get it. And by the way, I was hearing information, about it could be transmitted by glasses, having a drink or knives and forks or any of those things. It wasn't just about having sex. So, but I think about it as I go through my learning about HIV and why did I change my opinion about it? I did a lot of research, right? Where was I when I first heard HIV? Yeah, I think, quite honestly, it was the situation that happened to my aunt. She was better educated on it, and I wasn't educated at all on it at that time. And then when was that? That would have been when I was in Africa, so the early 80s, I would think. Or mid 80s. When did you first hear about HIV? If you can remember, you probably can remember where you were or what you were doing around that time. And that's your pivot point, really. And so how has my opinion changed is a question, right? It's changed dramatically. Yeah, interesting. Jody's saying Rock Hudson was also was a pivot point for her as well. Yeah, he probably didn't realize the effect him coming out the way that he did about it. Uh, he probably didn't realize the absolute pivotal person he became in a generation, right? A generation who thought he was the greatest, sexiest guy, and then found out he was gay, and not only gay, but dying. And then, of course, that involved Doris Day, his very good friend, the actress Doris Day, where, that was like she stuck by him through thick and thin. And I had a much better opinion of her. I always thought she was a bit flighty, but really interesting. And you see Hawkeye saying, I wasn't even born yet, right? Those of us who got gray hair remember this. Yes, and Hawkeye is saying Rock Hudson coming out did a lot to destigmatize the illness. Absolutely. And yet the funny thing was, I would like to go on to then from that pivot point onto about gays. Who did you first meet that was gay? Somebody that you really were impacted by? Yes. Hawkeye saying the same with Freddie Mercury, revealing his diagnosis just a day before he died. Yes, for those of you who are big Queen fans, all right, Queen had the same effect on Freddie Mercury had the same effect on his generation as Rock Hudson did on my generation. And so the fact that Freddie Mercury passed was impactful, and that was the pivot point for a lot of another generation. So who was the first person that you met that was gay, or even who was the pivot person that made you realize that, hey, being gay isn't something that should be stigmatized? I went to London, as you know, in the early 80s. And my second landlord in London was gay. What a great guy. And he was what I call, I don't know, I hope it's not considered disrespectful today, but it might be. But in those days, he was really camp gay. I mean, he was so exaggeratedly gay, it wasn't even funny. And he had the greatest sense of humor, and he was so self-deprecating. He told jokes about himself all the time. And he used to make me laugh until I cried. I used to value, he lived in it was his house, and I rented, the top floor of his house. And he used to invite me down, great cook, awesome cook. He used to invite me down for dinner all the time. And then I'd meet his friends who were all gay. All right. And, it was just, to me, like, hello, what's wrong with gay people? Why is there this big stigma about gay people? Really nice people. My very first friend in Canada was gay, and still is. All right. So I can tell you that I remember the pivotal moments in my life about gays very well. What was it that formed my opinion was how kind they were to me. I have to say that. I didn't meet a gay person. In fact, I don't think I have, I think I have yet to meet a gay person that was really nasty to me. All right? Yeah, Hawkeye is saying it was illegal to be gay in Canada until the late 60s. I know. And, I was in London, so that was something. So, but do you understand, my opinion started to shift because of the people I met. And then, why did I hold such strong opinions about gays being really nice people? It was the people that I met that were gay. If I met the first 5 people and they were really nasty and weirdos, I guess I would have had a different opinion. Hawkeye's saying, I know a gay man who eventually took his own life because he felt outcast by his church and community. You know something, Hawkeye? I can remember I can remember being in Maine, and forgive me for this, Jeannie, because it was in Maine, and going to a Catholic church service with my then boyfriend. Excuse me. and listening to the bishop of that diocese giving a sermon, whatever they call it in Catholicism, um, giving that sermon, and it was castigating gays. And guess what? The two guys either side of him, officiating with him, were both gay. And how do we know that? Because I watched their body language, right, and their mannerisms, of course. But all right, so. And I remember the funny thing about this. I remember the boyfriend sitting next to me saying, very quietly, "Sal, please do not stand up. Please sit on your hands and do not say anything. I beg you." Right? Because my body language had changed. How could that guy stand up there and say that when he must have known both the two guys either side of him were gay? How could any decent person do that? All right? This is in the days of, don't tell. So really interesting. So Jeannie's saying, my oldest friend is gay. She asked me early on if I would always be her friend no matter what. And to this day, we are friends and care about one another. I've been the only straight friend at some parties. That is also a memory for me, Jeannie. I remember going to my first party with a friend that I made when I first came to Canada. And he invited me to a party he had. And it was a dinner party and very formal and everything else. And he stood up at the very beginning. I thought he was going to do grace. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, just want to give out a general notice here. Sal is our token straight. I always remember. And I sort of went, what? Sal is our token straight. And I didn't realize it, but all the people I'd been talking to and enjoying, every one of them was gay, except me. And I thought that was the greatest honor for him to invite me to his party full of gay people, and I was the only straight one. I always valued that. All right, so Jeannie is saying, hang on a second. Right, she said, that she knows that this has changed now, right? We welcome all people. Yes. And I think, I hope everybody feels the same. Hawkeye is saying, I think when it really comes down to it is the fact that everybody is an expert in their own experiences. Okay. And those experiences are unique and different. We can't tell someone else how to live their life. All right. Or that your opinion is the right one. Jody's saying great stories. Well, Jody, what's coming up is I keep opening up my mind and remembering different parts of the story. All right, so we've done marijuana, we've done HIV. How about the first person that you heard that was gay and got married, right? Did that have an effect on any of you? Did any of you see gay marriage as a different thing? And I'm talking about some of these things because obviously we're going to end up with Roe versus Wade. But, you understand, I'm building up to, because now we're getting quicker at it. It's easier to go through the system. All right. I'm thinking about the first gay marriage. Guess I saw that on television. So the news had impact for me on that. That was the Who. What was it? It was a couple of guys that I saw get married. Why did it have impact? It was the joy on their faces. I felt so happy for my gay friends that were now going to be able to, get married in Canada. Where was I when I first saw that? I think I was actually sitting in bed. Now that I think about it. All right. When? Gosh, I don't know. Must have been within the last 25 years. When did gay marriage start in Canada? I don't know, but it must have been within the last. The gay marriage thing I remember. I've got a feeling I was in Canada then. Hawkeye saying, I saw a story about two 90-year-old women who were finally able to legally marry. Some of them, sadly, one of them passed away shortly thereafter. Yeah, wasn't that sad? All right. And so, you look at it now, but can you see how your opinion about gay marriage changed and how your opinion changed over the years? I hope you can see that. So now then, let's go a step further. This will be interesting. All right, so Chip is saying, I remember it being on the news and just thought, it's about time. Yeah. All right. How about the pandemic? Who was your pivotal person about the pandemic? Jeannie's saying, I know a gay friend of mine who married a woman. They were happy for years, but he was really gay. His friends were shocked by his decision. All right, so gay marriage was recognized in Canada in 2005. Yep, I said it, it was just like, I got a feeling it was in the last 20 years. And I wasn't wrong. All right, so pandemic. Well, shall we start with when? When did you first start getting a eye-opener on the pandemic? I have to say that I think the very first time it came on the news, so I know the WHO, came on the news about China having this flu starting up. I want to tell you, for some reason, I've got a feeling it was November. I could be wrong. I think it was either November or December. In other words, it was before the everybody else. And I immediately, you're going to be surprised about this. What did I do about it? I immediately wrote to Wish in China or wherever they are and said, do me a favor, send me those N95 masks. I remember doing that before they were banned anyway, right? You weren't allowed. Immediately that day, I ordered a shipment of those masks for me. By the way, I gave most of them away to my friends in December, January. It was interesting. But who was the pivotal person in my mind? Dr. Fauci. All right. I believed him. I believed what he said. I didn't believe the guy he was serving at the time, but I did believe what Dr. Fauci was saying, rightly or wrongly. The jury's still out on it. Jody's saying the same thing. Dr. Fauci was a very believable person. All right, so he was my pivotal person. Yeah, the pandemic, people started dying all over in 2019 and then hospitalized in the States, right? It's crazy to think how far we've come, and yet we still have so progress to go in regards to accepting people in our community. You bet. And that's the whole point why I believe that the next couple of years, if you live in the States or Canada or any, that area, as we go through this next election cycle, and now with Roe versus Wade, which we're getting to next, the discussions around barbecue. Can you imagine going to a barbecue on Independence Day, for those of you in the States, right? You know what the conversation is going to turn to. Whichever side the people sit on, people are going to bring it up. So I thought it'd be a really good idea if we talk about this a little and understand why it is so important to understand our feelings. All right, so last but not least, as we go into a general discussion, but how about Roe versus Wade? When? I don't know when it happened, but I got a feeling it must have been in the 70s. Does anybody know for sure? Just look that up for us, right? When did Roe versus Wade go down? All right, Hawkeye's saying that he had a pivotal person, the same with the chief medical officer in Alberta. However, she was later pressured by the United Conservative government to remove the regulations early. Yes, compromised. She eventually became compromised by them. Yes, because she changed her opinion based on who was pressurizing her. Right. Okay. So I am I thought it was in the 70s, right? So early 70s, in fact, January the 22nd, 1973. Very swift, Jody. How you do that, I will never know. So that is my first memory. But how many of you weren't even born in the 70s, all right? And you've got to think about that. So some of us can remember that. Who was the pivotal person? Gloria Steinem. When I think about Roe versus Wade, I think about Gloria Steinem and the work that she did. Unbelievable work that she did. All right. And so she was the pivotal person for me about understanding why it was important for us to have control of our own bodies. And by the way, I'm a Me Too person, and you've heard me talk about it, but I was raped. And so this to me was really important. Yes, Hawkeye is saying ultimately you can't ban abortion. You can only ban safe abortions. How many of you agree with him? And how many of you, I presume Hawkeye is a guy. Yeah, I made a judgment on that. So you think about it, right? That the abortion will still carry on, but we're talking Roe versus Wade. So I heard about that the day that it happened, obviously. I watched it on the news. The Who, for me, the pivotal person at that time who led my opinions about it was Gloria Steinem. She worked so hard to have it happen. What do I remember about that time? I've got to tell you, I can just remember feeling great relief. Why was that so important to me? I later went to live in a country that didn't allow abortion. And that was in Africa. And I remember the fundamental shift in my concern for all the women of all shapes, sizes, age, color, race, whatever, ethnic background. I just remember looking at them all and just remembering, what it was like to not have to go through that. So, that people were getting raped, the African women were getting raped every day, all right, and could do nothing about it. So if any of you have seen, movies like Roots and things like that, the way that men treated women in those days, even in the 60s, was still that they had the right to rape us anytime. That's how they felt, all right? Hawkeye is saying some people think men shouldn't be able to have an opinion of it one way or the other. And some degree, I can respect that, as I don't know the experience of it, but I will speak out for people's rights. Okay, so to me, it was, I am very sensitive to Roe versus Wade because I had experience of being raped. And therefore, it was a very touchy subject to me all along the way. All right. And I had lived in a country where, you were able to get an abortion. So now let me ask you another question. How many of you have heard that when they read the judgment, they now are in the judgment, it actually mentioned, and now we will look at gay rights and contraception as well. Now, I just want to, before everybody blows up here, I just want to make sure that we're clear on something. I'm going to ask you a question and think very hard and then give me your answer. And by the way, thank you all for participating. The question that I have is, do you think decisions about your body, your contraception, who you sleep with, should be made by a bunch of people who are put into that position by the guys in Washington, or do you believe those decisions should be made in your state? All right, that the guys that you voted in to look after your state should have the right. Which do you think, in terms of of your understanding of the Constitution? You all studied it at school, and I didn't study it. I think we talked about it one day, but you didn't. I didn't study it the way that some of you did, or the Constitution in Canada, for that matter. But what I'm saying is, do you think it should be something controlled by the state, or should it be controlled by the people? And the people you elect to look after you at the state level. So give me your feeling about that. How do I feel about that? I quite honestly have to say that representation to me is important on this decision. All right. Um, when, but only equal representation. All right. If your elected state body is 99.9% male, then how can they possibly know what this is like? All right, and this is true. When the penalty for abortion is greater than the penalty for rape, that's when you know there is a war against women. Oh boy, we know it. All right. And again, every woman is an expert in their own experience, and it's better to listen. Way to go, Hawkeye. We're glad you're in the room. Jeannie's saying, I always spoke out for kindness toward women who had abortions, but wanted women to have choices, the choice to have the baby. Whole different story, right? So let's go back to the question for a second, which is, who do you want making that decision? All right, whether it is legal or not. Do you want it to be at the Supreme Court level, or do you want it to be at your local state level? See, that's what we got to think about for a second. But if your law is, if the argument is it wasn't covered in the Constitution, I want to tell you, I could fight that for a month of Sundays. Yeah, neither was driving. Why? Because we didn't have it at the time. All right. Nothing in the Constitution about I need to stop at a stop sign. It's not a constitutional thing. All right. It wasn't in the Constitution. Just think about that. All right. So, and there's so many examples. So I just want to know from you, and there's no right or wrong. In your opinion, do you think it should be made at the Supreme Court level, or do you think it should be made at your regional level, if you like? All right, so Hawkeye's saying, I don't think it should matter either way. Who decides what? Human rights are human rights. Yeah, we know which side of the fence you sit. I want to tell you, I am really glad that I am no longer of reproduction age. All right? Because there's part of me that goes, I think today, I've got to tell you this, and right or wrong, I've got to tell you this. If I was still what I call reproductive age, I think before anybody had sex with me, including my husband, if I were married, I would make them sign something that says, if I fall pregnant because of this sex act, whether you are think you're protected or not, all right, that you agree to pay me $500,000 or X% of your salary for the rest of your life until this person is out of the household and 18, right? Whatever that age is. I would have a whole lot of those things printed up and say, I will have sex with you, right? But not until you've signed this, and that you sign it without coercion. All right, because to me, this is like, what if men had to get castrated if they raped somebody? Why is it always the women who have to pay the price? And 9 times out of 10 without any support. Why is it the women that have to lose their jobs? How come the men don't lose their jobs? Because they need to go home and look after the child. You understand, there's not a maybe for me on this one at all. And what I said the moment that I heard that Roe versus Wade was struck down, you remember a week ago, what I said was, do you have any idea what it's going to do to your economy? All right? Do you have any idea what it's going to do to your economy? X% of the women in the workforce right now are going to have to leave to look after children in about 9 months' time in those states. All right? Not that they don't have the right to choose, because they will need to look after their child. All right. And how many women today no longer have benefits? All right. At least in the 70s, we all were in sort of pretty secure jobs and we had good benefits where we'd get paid maternal leave and so forth. But today, that's not true. So much of the female workforce today is on contract, not working at a job that gives them benefits. All right. So really important to understand, all right, that, hi, Jenny, it's nice to hear that you're doing that trip. I'm certain that will be beautiful. Enjoy your trip. But, Julie, I'm pretty certain you will agree that things have changed now. So you pull that many women out of the workforce, what's going to happen? And we're already short of workers. What's going to happen next? Oh, by the way, some men will be cheering, not all, but some men will be cheering because they've got the power again working. I can't help wondering whether this isn't part of the whole story, right? Men want the power back. And how do you do that? Get the women back in the homes so we guys can get the jobs. I'm sorry, but I think that is part of it. And by the way, why did religion want people not to have contraception, right? Guess why? Right? The more children you have, the more converts I have. And I think it's a basic tenet of the Jesuits who say, give me a child until they're 7, I've got them for life. All right. And the thing is this, why do religions not want you to practice safe sex? It's because you will produce more children. So you look at all of this and go, make sure that you understand what this is going to do to your taxes. How many more schools will you need? How many more daycares will not be available? There won't be enough daycares to look after, which will again force women to stop working. This is going to have repercussions across the world. And again, that's another thing to look at. Now that the shining light, America, has done this, how many other countries are going to have this groundswell? But I have faith. Okay. I have faith. And my faith is in the power of women. I've got to tell you that. Whether it was we weren't allowed to vote, it was okay for us to get hit by a stick as long as it wasn't thicker than your thumb. All those things. I believe that not only will women get out and fight, but luckily men will do so as well. Men who are not afraid of the power of women. And I say that because it's important to understand that, as Hawkeye so correctly said, human rights are human rights. And you can say, well, it's a human right to live. And I understand that as well. And some of you see that, life starts at contraception, conception, not contraception. Life starts at conception. But again, all right, so Hawkeye's saying it takes a lot to support another human being. And if one isn't well enough to support themselves, they can be reasonably expected to take on that level of emotion. They can't be reasonably expected to take on that level of emotional maturity to take care of a child. Hallelujah. I read that again. Listen to what Hawkeye is saying. It takes a lot to support another human being, bring them up and everything else, right? And if one isn't well enough to support themselves, they can't be reasonably expected to take on that level of emotional maturity to take care of a child. And because having kids changes the trajectory of an entire person's life, or the person's entire life, right? So here is a person who's gone through school, all right, and their next step is to become a doctor, suddenly falls pregnant now. They're not going to be studying to be a doctor anymore. So, I look at it and go, This is going to be some interesting conversations we have in the next coming weeks. But again, I didn't see anybody else answer my question. Should it be a state level or should it be at Supreme Court level that those decisions are made? You see, I believe in my heart of hearts, the decision whether to, I think an awful lot of women will now choose to have hysterectomies rather than fall pregnant. All right, so Hawkeye is saying, I personally believe life starts at consciousness and self-awareness, but that's just my opinion. So you're thinking, so that would lead me to the question, Hawkeye, and I do so with great respect. So do you believe in late-term abortion then? Because you're saying starts at consciousness, and the baby, at what point do you think a baby has consciousness? At the fetal stage and self-awareness? Because, there's a big argument about at what stage should we allow abortion, all right? And I personally believe that I don't necessarily believe in late-term abortions unless the mother is at risk. So, I look at it all and go, we're all going to have some pretty strong opinions about this. If we're normal people, all right? It's just like, of course we're going to have opinions and they're going to be strong. And so therefore, every group that you get into right now is going to be probably talking about this. Who has their right to an opinion? Who? Does everybody have the right to an opinion? Based on their upbringing, based on what they learned as children, based on what they learned from their parents, based on what they learned from their teachers, based on what they learned or did not learn as an adult. I believe everybody has the right to an opinion. Remember what changed your opinion of things. All right? Right? Remember what changed your opinion of things. It was knowledge. And until we have equal education for all people, I also say be very careful about judging people who didn't have the same education as you did or the same faith base as you did. All right? Because it shifts depending. Hawkeye saying, does anybody remember being in the womb? I don't know a single person who can say they were self-aware at that point. But again, ultimately, I don't know the answer. Good way to stop that argument. Well done. Jody's saying, I don't know the answer either. I do know I'm very upset about the decision. Yep. But you see, what they're saying is we reversed it because we don't believe it is in the Constitution. And our job at the Supreme Court is to go by the rule of law for the country, which is the Constitution. I think I quote them correctly on that. All right. And therefore, we're handing it back to the individual states. My question is, how many of you would help somebody in some way who lived in one of those states and needed to get out of the state to have an abortion? How many of you would, gladly cough up some money to help them do that? And the reason I say that is because I think these laws that they are threatening, that if you aid somebody in this, you could end up in jail for 16 years. It's just insane. All right? Imagine if, because Jody lives in New Hampshire, that I was not allowed to help her as I see fit. Right? I don't think you get to control that, buddy. What I do to help somebody else is none of your business. It's between myself and Jody. Or Leah in hospital. You know what I mean? It's got nothing to do with anybody else. Oh, yes. Hawkeye is saying, I wish Ruth Bader Ginsburg was still alive. And may I add to that, please, Hawkeye, and still sitting on the bench, right? So, I want to tell you, I'm sure that she and so many others are just looking at us going, what the heck happened here? And I've got to say something else. I've got to tell you something. My opinion, well played, Mr. Trump. I've got to say that. The evangelicals told him, you will get our vote if you can do this, and he did it. All right? He loaded the Supreme Court with people. Now then, opinion. What is your opinion of poor Susan Collins, who was the deciding vote for Kavanaugh and who had enough discussion with Kavanaugh face-to-face privately to believe that he told the truth, that he would not vote to reverse it? Can you, my heart goes, I don't know if any of you feel any compassion for her, but how on earth does she get to face her constituents? Yes, and Hawkeye is saying they have now infiltrated the level of the Supreme Court. However, we must still remember that the people outnumber them. There's power in numbers, yes. Jody's saying, I feel terrible for the weight she is carrying right now. She was lied to under oath. I know that some of us said that at the time. I know that some of us watched him go through those Senate hearings and go, he's lying through his teeth. Okay. So, but I'm in a different country. My question is, if he lied, and now you do know that the lawyers will pick this apart and show how he didn't lie. The wording was so exact that when you take the exact thing that he said, not what the understanding of it was, but the actual thing that he said, I am certain was very carefully crafted by lawyers. How many of you can see my point of view? And anybody going in for a Senate confirmation is drilled down to such a depth about how do you answer this question and not lie. All right? That is the point that I want you all to understand. All right, so Jeannie's saying, interesting point, Hawkeye. Jeannie, I always appreciate your input because it's always thought out. Jeannie's saying Ruth Bader Ginsburg believed in women's rights, but she questioned Roe versus Wade. All right? Did you know that? And if not, then look into that. And when you've done that, thank Jeannie for her input, because Jeannie could be your pivotal moment about Ginsburg. All right. And maybe that sways you more, knowing that Ruth did not agree with Roe versus Wade. And you see, they're two different things. One is women's rights, and the other is, was Roe versus Wade correct in its decision finding? And we know it was the pivotal moment. All right. And Jeannie's saying she was critical of Roe versus Wade. What about, now that they've done this, you know that the other things will come down, right? The gay rights. How many of you are going to be okay until they take contraception off the table? What about when all your gay friends are suddenly not legally married anymore? At what point are you going to go, this is ridiculous, we've done something wrong here? And I'm not saying it is the fault of the Supreme Court. I'm saying you need to decide where the decisions need to be made. All right? In your democracy and mine democracy, I need to decide where I want to put my voice. And as some of you know, I was actually asked by the then Deputy Premier of British Columbia to actually go into politics. All right. And she said, because, Sal, the way that you describe things, the way that you say things, it makes a lot of sense. And we need you on our side, not on the other side, right? I found that quite interesting. The fact that I couldn't actually do the job because I wasn't even a citizen at that time, sort of stopped everybody in their tracks because they presumed their opinion of me was that I must be. So Hawkeye's saying ultimately it comes down to technicalities and formalities, perhaps, but again, two different issues two different issues here. So I wouldn't want to be Judge Kavanaugh right now, or Justice Kavanaugh right now, because he's now Supreme Court Justice, right? Well, whatever. I wouldn't want to be him because I think he'll be the fall guy for a lot of people. But here is the thing. Yes, I agree with you entirely, Hawkeye. Hawkeye is saying, I don't see this as a win for either side. How many of you can imagine that Mr. Trump, ex-President Trump, would have been laughing last week when this went down and when I made that happen? All right. And rightly so, because he did. But here is the thing. Will it help the GOP stay in power? See, different question, right? One is, did he orchestrate it? All right. But will it help the GOP? Judy, very good point. And, I'm almost in tears as I read this because it's so true. Jeannie says Susan Collins has great ethics. I've always thought so. As did John McCain, by the way. All right, Susan Collins has great ethics. I do not always agree with her, but I'm proud of her as a person. Yes, my first question when this went down is, what will happen to Susan Collins? How many people in Maine will continue to support her when hers was the vote that made the difference to Kavanaugh, and that Kavanaugh was seen to be the shift on this? Hawkeye is saying, without going to specifics, it just shows how hypocritical President Trump is. I don't want to get into that discussion today, quite honestly. I want to make sure we keep on the discussion about how does it affect us. How many of you have children or grandchildren? How do you explain to them what just happened? That's what I want to know. How do you explain to somebody who's grown up being aware of abortion clinics and so forth? I stated, and I went on the record immediately that decision came down and said that the black market on the day after drugs, day after pills, will just go insane. All right. And with the world the way that it is, with social media the way that it is, I remember, for example, when I was a smoker, I remember that there was, a place that you could write to, and they would send you cartons of cigarettes. It probably was a Native Indian reserve. You could write to them, and they would mail you cigarettes. They then made it illegal to buy cigarettes online. Government, made it illegal to buy cigarettes that way. Do you think people still carried on doing it? You bet. I didn't, but they did. All right. Yes. Hawkeye's saying, if anything, it just highlights the liberties and freedoms that are at stake. And that's what I urge you all to do. I don't care whether you're for Roe versus Wade or against it. What I want you to see is how your rights can be taken away from you. And you thought you had the right, and apparently you don't. Because depending who is in power, they can set it up for those to see their way. Interesting point, Hawkeye, one that I relate to. I have an opinion about, right? Another strong one. Same thing about the feds are trying to what they're trying to do with flavored vapes. I want to tell you something. I smoked my whole entire life. Smoked my entire life from 15 onwards. I tried every single cessation method that there was. Hypnotherapy, you name it, the drugs, Wellbutrin, everything. Absolutely everything that they brought out that would help you stop smoking, I tried. And even my pharmacist said to me, Sal, I think you need to understand, I think you are addicted to something, and it's not the nicotine. There's something else in cigarettes that you're addicted to. Because these meds are helping other people. Why do they not even touch you? And he said, I think that you have a different thing. So here is the thing. The pivotal person in my life, without a doubt, that caused me to stop smoking was Juliana. And I will make sure that for the rest of her life, I thank her for coming into this world, because without her, I probably would not have given up smoking. And then I went to the one thing that helped me stop smoking for a year, and that was the patch. But the combination of the patch and Juliana, I haven't smoked a cigarette since the day that she was born. No, I lie. The day she was 3 months old, because I went to visit her the day she was 3 months old. All right. So Hawkeye is saying, my grandmother is a smoker and she refuses to switch. Her right. All right. Well, Butrin can also be used as an aid to smoking cessation therapy. Yep. That's why I took it. And Hawkeye is saying, my grandmother is set in her old ways and doesn't want to try anything new. I want to tell you, and you can believe me or not, I tried everything. Absolutely everything. You see, again, I go back to this reality. We all travel our own journeys, and we all have our reason for doing things. And when you can see that part of the reason you have the opinion that you do today is a pivotal person, all right? Somebody that you trusted, be it Dr. Fauci or the Tooth Fairy or whatever, all right? Why did you believe in Santa Claus, right? Somebody you trusted told you there was such a thing. And why were you devastated when you found out that children were laughing at you, other children in the playground were laughing at you because you believed in Santa Claus? And then how angry were you that your parents told you a lie? And then you heard there wasn't an Easter bunny either. I mean, hello. So you look at it and you go, we get fed a lot of lies in our time. And what I want us to do is to really have a look at how we gather our information. How many of you are prepared to join me in just this week to make a point of listening to the opposing news channel? All right, whatever you believe, right? Whatever you believe, how many of you are prepared to listen to at least one or maybe two or three, maybe one a day, newscast from some source that you don't believe in? Are any of you prepared to do that? So that we hear both sides of this story, all right? So that we now hear, what are our friends hearing that I'm not aware of? Because I believe your opinion and your understanding of your friends will be a lot better. Okay, saying in grade 5, my class went to the municipal government and eventually helped pass a regulation that bans smoking in public parks and playgrounds. Yes, if you don't agree with what just happened, then please be amongst the people who make things change. All right? There is a wonderful documentary, I'm sure it will be tonight, on Arthur Ashe. And it was so strange because We will remember Arthur Ashe, those of us who are older, as a phenomenal tennis player. But he was an influencer in his day, all right? So he took his influence, and he was gay, or was he gay? I think he was. And then took his influence and used it to help the HIV movement, and went as far as the United Nations with what he did. I'm thinking about the influence that Sean Penn has today. He took his fame and then spent so much of his life helping underdeveloped countries. And you can see when you watch him, he is passionate about making changes happen for the undeveloped countries. All right. And so I look at it and I go, I didn't even know that Arthur Ashe died of AIDS. I suddenly asked myself, how did he die? I didn't, I know that he died. How did he die? He died of AIDS-related pneumonia, HIV-related pneumonia. And I'm going, boy, how could I not have known that? I'm certain it was said at the time, but that never stuck in my mind. The reason he was so passionate about it was he had experience of it. All right? And so let me ask you, how many people of my age who were there when Roe versus Wade went in? It's not about whether Roe versus Wade was correct. It's about how many of us fought so hard to get that right, human right, to be able to decide what I do with my body. And, with tears in my eyes, I was one of them. All right? And so am I incensed? And it's not even in my country, and I am incensed. Women around the world are rolling their eyes. They rolled them pretty well, in the last decade about the US. But I want to tell you something. Women around the world are rolling their eyes right now and wondering what on earth happened. But again, I say to you, what if they're right? What if the point about what you can do with your body is not the business of the Supreme Court at all? See, that's what I want you to think about. I'm incensed that they overturned the thing that gave us human rights. But what if they're right on that side of it? Can any of you shift enough to see that? All right? That the actual ruling was it right that it was decided in the Supreme Court? And the answer is, it was decided in the Supreme Court because no lower court would approve it. And if they fought we fought all the way to the Supreme Court. We threw money behind it. Okay? And so what I'm saying to you is, do you think you are going to see a lot of people that probably have been pretty quiet for a long time? I'm going to call it the Gloria Steinem mob. Do you think that they are going to be stomping their foot just a little bit? But you know something? You're so right, Jeannie. Jeannie's saying our Portland, Maine newspaper is very much a pro-Democrat paper. Reading it daily shows that side only. And I am certain that you've got a I'm certain you've got a Republican paper in Maine as well, Jeannie. That's what free speech is about. I think that your paper, if it chooses to be pro-Democrat, has every right to do that. But what that is, it opens the door for somebody to produce a paper that is pro-Republican, and they have the right to do that. We choose which one we read. All right? And in today's day and age, Jeannie, all right, with all the knowledge that is available to us on the internet, we don't even have to wait for a newspaper, right? We can follow these trends online. I am so grateful for that. You know why? You don't mess with women. All right? There's a reason why the expression was a woman scorned. How many women are scorned right now? And how many women will get behind this fight? And how many women will want to help other women living in those communities? And is it the right for anybody to tell me I can't help them? Any more than I could help my friends with AIDS. You don't have that right, I don't believe. That's just my opinion. Who I help is my business, not yours. Who I help is my business, has nothing to do with you. If I like a person living in Outer Mongolia and I see that they could do with an extra $100 or $10, right? Do I have the right to send them that? Or does somebody else get to tell me that you're not allowed to do that? Because if it's true for one person, it must be true for all. Get my point? So therefore, if you can raise money for your political party via the internet, then why can we not, raise money for people? How many GoFundMe pages are going to end up, and then they're going to jail me for 10 years for helping somebody? I have an opinion about that. It's a couple of words, and it means go away. And it's not that polite. So think about it. Today we looked at how did we get to form our opinions. And what we're going to do next week in part 2 of this, if you guys have found this helpful, is I'm going to look at, if we know this is how our opinions were formed, then we know how other people's opinions were formed. And I believe that however difficult the conversation gets, we're going to teach, we're going to find some ways to be able to defuse some of the conversation. How many of you, Jeannie, just stay on a second, please. How many of you that are still on, how many of you respect Jeannie for the fact that she comes in and always gives us plays the devil's advocate? I want to tell you, I have great respect for Jeannie. You see, it is not Jeannie that I have I have a positive opinion of Jeannie, right? I might not have the same opinion as her, but I have a positive opinion of her as a person. Does that make sense? And that is what I want us to understand. You may disagree with somebody's opinion of politics or somebody's opinion of what is the right thing to do, but don't have a negative opinion about the person because of what they believe. They don't have the same experience, the same education, they don't have the same whatever, and it doesn't mean that because you have that you are right. And Hawkeye, I'm so glad that you came in to give us the male perspective on this, be it that you were on a certain side. And Hawkeye says, thanks, Jeannie. I think understanding different opinion and perspectives is what helps us form our own. Absolutely the truth. Every opinion you have today, there was a pivotal person who gave you that shifting point. And that's why we're going to continue to have these discussions. And that's why I pray that, people come in and give politely. By the way, great use of skill, Hawkeye. Great people skills, great balance, and understanding that your opinion is your opinion and you're entitled to it, but you don't have to insult others. Even if we disagree, he says, about understanding, it's about understanding why we disagree. And Jeannie says, years ago, I prayed in front of abortion clinics, but I never broke windows, threatened, or yelled at women. Yes, there's a difference, isn't there? And that's why I'm going to do that. You're Jonas? Duh, I should have known. Should have. Why am I shooting on myself? No. Jonas, always a pleasure. So think about this. All right? With your permission, we will continue to talk about these sort of things. I believe it will help us all. Now, isn't it interesting, Jonas? Because my opinion of Dr. Hawkeye was set, and then as soon as you said you're Jonas, I went. I don't know if you saw me physically shift my body language, right? Because Jonas to me is a very dear person. Uh, Dr. Hawkeye was a new person to me. So thank you for letting me know they were one and the same. This is Dear Mama Sal saying, we're all going to learn through this if we want to. We're all going to learn, and hopefully we will handle this better for ourselves. And hopefully in doing so, we will help other people learn the skill. That's what I'm hoping for. This is Dear Mama Sal saying, have a wonderful week. The temperature right now where I sit is 80 degrees. I'm going back to where the air conditioner's going to be on me. But I'm feeling quite cool. I have to say, see, I can handle 80 quite well. I lived in Africa without any problem, without air conditioning. 80, I don't find it. More than 80, it starts to get uncomfortable for me. That's my experience, and therefore that's my opinion. This is Dear Mama Soul saying, love you dearly. Thank you so much for having enough positive opinion about me that we can get together and talk about these very difficult things, right? And thank you for understanding that my opinion is just my opinion. And I'm glad that you're prepared to hear it. This is Dear Mama Sal's thanking Jody for being there. Thank you all for being part of the discussion. It was made so much more important by you being here. And I hope you can see that too. Bye-bye for now.